Hello, welcome, for the few of you that are here. You survived a very long day, I think. So I am Simon Crownshaw, the Worldwide Director of Media Entertainment. I will talk to you for a few minutes before we start a wonderful panel. Today, autonomous by design. And so how do we think about scaling media operations with Microsoft AI solutions? I think certainly something where many of you, if you're in the media industry, will think about how does AI even apply to many different processes. You saw it in the video a little bit just a second ago. Ultimately, AI is certainly ready for media and entertainment. It's certainly already transforming it. There's no question that we see a significant amount of interest in terms of personalization, monetization, the way content is created. And you can see some great statistics here on the slide. 90% of M&E companies are already trying to figure out how to invest in AI. They've got plans to use it. They're already using it. In fact, I will say this. Many media organizations have been using it for years, right? It's a huge part of advertising already in terms of how they've used data for personalization. Now we're just seeing it democratized at scale. And so this is a huge opportunity, and one where, look at the size of the market, $99.5 billion in terms of how that is expected to grow by 2030. That is a phenomenal number. Media entertainment, by the way, is not the biggest industry in the world. No, I wish it was, but it isn't. But it's certainly one of the most impactful. And look at the numbers that you see on the slide. I think it's amazing to see the transformation that we're already seeing. And by the way, media companies need it to survive to some degree. So what does it mean when we talk about frontier? You probably heard a lot about frontier this whole week. I probably don't even need to tell you what it really means. But in media entertainment, obviously, there's 4 different categories that we think about, right? Which is enriching employee experiences, because many customers that we work with need to think about the way that their employees are using data, thinking about content, how do they get it quicker to the market. It could be that they've just got individual processes and workflows that need to be better, right? Whether it be from production to enterprise, they are really, really key. Audience engagement is critical. So if you think anything about media entertainment, it's always about the audience. Who's watching? How do you get them to watch? How do you get them to find your content? What does that mean? So personalizing that, I would imagine there's a time coming where every experience will be personalized to one of us, right? What does that mean? Those reshaping of business processes are critical. There's no question that media processes have lived for a very long period of time. They tend to live for a long time. We don't like to change them too much, because once they work, we don't stop using them. And so how do we reshape those business processes to work in this new AI world? I would argue that most streaming platforms were never built with AI in mind. They will have to be replatformed to make this new world work. And then how do we think about innovation? Bending that curve where we can do more faster together. Right? Innovation's always been a part of media and entertainment, but for the most part, we can do more. And so how do we apply the right technology, the right people to do things faster than we've ever done? And I would tell you that media companies are under a lot of pressure. Whether you're an agency, a publisher, a broadcaster, they all need to do a little bit more, and that innovation is really, really critical. So we work with lots of great companies. Did anyone go and have their picture taken with the Premier League trophy? Yes? No? Yes, I see a few. OK. I think, obviously, that one is really impactful. It's reinventing the customer's experience to personalize the way that they interact with their team, their fan. As a fan, can they customize their logos? Can they do commerce for the first time? Can they ask questions as a companion? Yes, they can. Right? That's giving the fans a great place, almost a home, to go get their information about what they're interested in. And to be able to, for the first time, have questions all in one place. Phenomenal. Dentsu, for example, does take it the other section. We go back to enriching employee experiences. What they've done around creating insights and making it easier for them to understand what campaigns need to look like, to do personalization or campaign updates in real time is huge. And all of that underpinned by a great AI platform. 𝗲𝗲 does a lot of stuff with translation, for example. So if you've listened to any of their content, now they're able to use AI to quickly translate so more people can look at their content even faster. And then Kantar, so I did a panel yesterday on Kantar, specifically with Chris Petranto, and all of what they had done on their platform, and the way that they had used their data insights to think about really redefining how they would put campaigns together to build marketing campaigns and so on was huge. Those are 4 amazing examples of how media entertainment is transitioning or transforming in a way with AI. I have to personally say I'm very impressed by what the Premier League has done. primarily, they were using a ton of Microsoft technology. To build what they have done in 4 months is phenomenal, right? If you've tried the app, that is amazing, right? That doesn't just happen overnight. That is an amazing amount of technology on our platform that brought that to life in conjunction with some great partners. It's a huge win. So how do you stand out? I think it's important for anyone watching online or in the room, right? How are you thinking about how AI can apply? I always say in M&E, it's no good putting your head in the sand. You have to try these things. Find a way, right, to invest in that technology, whether it's finding a safe environment to put data to good use. Can I shield it to test it, how to create new content? What does that look like? How can I use data to test and ask questions about personalization? You have to try it, right? Because you will only learn more. What we have found, right, is that the data in M&E could be better, right? And I think most media companies are finding the same thing. They could do more, but their data's not good enough because we haven't looked after it for long enough, right? There just hasn't been the way. And so when we think about becoming Frontier, it asks us a couple of different questions. Yes, we use Copilot, Copilot Studio, Copilot M365. Those are ways we get really rapid insights as an employee to ask questions about what we do. How do I quickly find something? Those are huge. But then I also want to apply that with agents, right? It's like an agent's doing things autonomously, and we might get agent-to-agent conversations. What does that mean? But it's also predicated on one other thing, you, right? So always the human in the loop. What does that mean? I'm sure you've heard a lot about that this week, but it's really important to think about how the human stays involved. What does that mean? Right? It's a really important factor in cross M&E because at the heart of all media entertainment is storytelling. And it's a human emotion. How do we think about that? So I want to talk a little bit. Let's see if it'll go. Yes. OK, so what is an agent? Pause the slide for just a second, right? So an agent, whether it be asking an LLM for instructions or tools, you've got your inputs, your system events, your agent messages, and so on, and you've got your outputs, right? So obviously this agent is working really closely and understanding all of the information it's getting, right? All the inferencing and embedding that goes on within the agent. And as I said, you may have one agent talking to another agent to make those calls autonomously. You may have an agent that says, I want to create something, then I want to check it against a brand or a process. I want to validate that it's not being copyrighted anywhere else, and it comes out, right? So you've got all these different agents that are putting things together. But unlike previous agents, we need them to act and learn. And I will tell you that that's why I come back to the data all the time, right? Because that semantic understanding that needs to exist from agents is really key. Because when we create standards across media entertainment, right, that somewhat freezes that understanding. But now we need to free it entirely, right? How does that learning really manifest itself? And so as we think through that, most agents have been brittle. They were hard, right? We wasted time structuring data. The automation was not self-healing. We didn't understand what was really going on. Sometimes you have to go back and understand a little bit about how to solve those problems, and they were tricky. And teams couldn't really figure out, right? So the UI was never even updated to understand what that really meant. And so as we move forward in that process, new agents, right, are now resilient. When we think about it from across media entertainment, right, they're understanding a little time understanding structured data or unstructured data. They're able to understand how those LLMs can talk to each other and call self-healing and understanding. So we think about infrastructure that needs to be spun up really, really quickly. How does it learn if something goes down? How does it figure out what's going to happen every time? One of the things that I've really enjoyed, and you're going to probably hear maybe a bit from MediaKind when they talk about it, is that systems need to be smart because these processes are happening across media entertainment all of the time. I might create an asset that I need tomorrow. I may need it in a certain format or aspect ratio. Those are really key. And with these agents, they can learn what you need and when you're going to need it, right? Especially when you rely on automation. So if you think about multi-platform publishing, for example, or I may want to use vertical video or apply localization, I also need my system to understand how quickly that's going to need to happen. Maybe I don't want a human to do it. I want a robot or an automation piece to do it. I still want a human to check it. I still need validation. But I also want to make sure I can automate those processes with semantic learning, right, as they get better over time. So we have lots of different ways to build agents. And that's why this is autonomous by design, right? So we can understand how we use infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Lots of different ways to control and analyze and customize those agents in the way that you need them. I say that primarily because inside a media pipeline, you need that control, but you also need the understanding. There's a lot of time wasted by moving content from A to B. It's a workflow, and that learning is critical, right? Whether we're talking something about 1080p or 4K or 8K, what it might be, I need to down-res or up-res certain pieces of content. Those are really interesting. But they also need to be smart enough to understand what's going to happen in that. And those broadcast flows, which are really critical, are really helpful from an agent perspective, because what's the one thing we don't have enough of in media entertainment? Anyone want to guess? Not enough people. So it's really critical that we have these automation and learning processes to make it easier for people. I guarantee media and entertainment companies would love to do more. And that brings up speed, right? Because they'd like to go faster. Because we talk about one thing in media entertainment. It is about speed. If you have the information, you need to get it to the right place really, really quickly, really fast. Because if you don't have it, somebody else definitely does, right? And that's key. So with that in mind, we have an amazing panel for the next 30-odd minutes or so here. I'm going to invite to the stage Ronnie Yates, who's a GM in our engineering practice, and Erik Ramberg, who's a VP and Head of Global Business Development at MediaKind. Please welcome to the stage.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ronnie Yates, engineering GM over in Microsoft, and I work in the TMG and in global space, helping customers bring solutions to light. And I'm here with Erik, who is the VP over at MediaKind. And before we jump in, maybe we'll learn just a little bit more about MediaKind here.
Right.
Nice. And Erik, so you're VP of Business Development and Strategy, and you're leading the strategy and execution, everything from broadcasting to sports operators. Maybe you can fill us in, just talk a little bit about what MediaKind does.
Absolutely, and thank you all for having me here. We're very happy with our partnership with Microsoft. We've done a lot of amazing things, some of which I'll touch on here. So MediaKind, we've been around for 7 years as an independent entity. Prior to that, we're actually part of Ericsson and the global operator, sort of infrastructure company. And at that point in time, if we all remember back then, that was kind of like peak pay TV. That was the point when penetration of pay TV was 90+% in the US, and pay TVs come from operators. And so we worked very closely with Comcast, with Deutsche Telekom, with Bell Canada, et cetera, around the world to be able to enable their pay TV systems. Well, of course, we know that things have changed dramatically over the past 10 years. And as that business has struggled, as people have cut the cord or maybe never been cord nevers and have looked for alternative ways to be able to get their entertainment. Because we all still want to be entertained. That's an important part of our lives, an important part of culture, community, just connecting with people, and or just relaxing. And so with that advent of all these new distribution methods, separating from Ericsson and being an independent entity, Ericsson still retains a portion of us, a minority portion, we were able to then expand our business and sort of really take some of the premier media companies in the world into the streaming space and do it in a way that allowed them to manage both their traditional distribution, which would be called linear distribution, as well as with the streaming distribution. So they can maximize monetization of it, be able to understand consumption of it by their audiences, be able to adapt and do sort of new things with it. So we're kind of that player behind the curtain for doing a lot of these things. So we have some of our companies that we work for there, up on there. You know, I'll call it the NBA there because they actually do own a portion of us. And over the past 3 years, jointly with Microsoft, we did an amazing transformation for them for League Pass. Been a lot of articles written recently about how much the growth of streaming has been for them and their business, and how it helped them for the major traditional broadcast deals to really amplify the revenues they have from there. But we have, you know, worked with many other companies, you know, Premier League as well, which Simon brought up, as well as global streamers such as DAZN, classic entities like Warner Brothers, et cetera.
Great, great.
Yeah, and I guess our last slide there is just a kind of, which I already spilled the beans in terms of the League Pass, but worth it. If anyone hasn't signed up for League Pass, you know, or downloaded the Premier League app, definitely do that. It's a fabulous way to be able to watch the games live, be able to catch up on interviews with your favorite players, engage in fantasy play, and et cetera, all those types of things.
Excellent, excellent. So Erik, I know you are a true pioneer and veteran in this space. 25 plus years, I think, in this space, so which is wonderful. How
I started when I was 5 years old.
5? Yeah. Just before me, I was 1.
Yeah.
So how have you seen AI transforming this space from your view?
Well, it has been very integral, really, into the media space for a long time. Maybe in ways that were very much behind the hood. So one part of it is like our core video technology that we have. So the actual taking the video signals, you know, when they come out of the camera, they're, you know, hundreds of megabits a second, like really heavy weight video, turning that into something usable for production, and then taking it out of production and turning it into something usable for distribution. So going from 200 to 25 to 10 to 5 or something like that, megabits a second. Being able to do that, though retaining as much of the quality as possible, you know, really goes back to one of the fundamental uses of AI, and that is machine learning. So for almost 2 decades, you know, our encoder's been based on machine learning as they take the incoming live video and they identify the sections of the frame, what's of interest there, what type of thing is it there, how is it moving, how is it likely to move, and then chooses the right tool sets in order to optimize the video quality for that. That's actually how it works in terms of being able to compress those things down and retain that video quality. But it's more than that, though. I mean, you know, Simon mentioned it in terms of discovery has always been a huge part. You know, maybe that was more sort of, you know, big data is what they call back in the age, you know, but nowadays it really is AI inference to be able to understand your history and what you're trying to look for, and being able to really understand and give you the right suggestions for that. So there's many different ways that touch us as the audience, as the viewers, but then there are also the things behind the scenes as well. So live operations, I think, is a key part of it. How to be able to run live operations, have that extremely high level of reliability, and when it's live, of course, you don't have a second to lose anything. You know, you've lost it if you've messed up at any point in there. So you really have to be rigorous about how you set things up, how you run it, you know, and how you move on to the next thing.
And how do you see the move from, you know, you guys have been doing traditional ML and AI in that space. How do you see that transition from sort of that traditional ML into an agentic space where you now have agents that are reasoning and acting and using tools? How much do you keep human in the loop versus, hey, this is a full agentic solution that I'm okay with letting go?
Yes. Well, let me just give some examples. Maybe we'll kind of go from there, you know, for it. And a lot of this really is driven by business need, you know, in terms of identifying the opportunity to be able to do it. So when you look at the media business, you know, what really drives the highest revenues, and, you know, whether that's subscription loyalty or whether that's advertising dollars paid for the the inventory. And that really is live broadcast. You know, and that's why you see the Netflixes of the world adding live. You know, that's why you see the ones who, you know, the ESPNs of the world who have always been about live events, how they can, why they're really investing heavily in them. And so much so that they, like, executives tell me that, you know, their buyers are like increasing, they figure in the next 5 years 100-fold the number of live hours of events that they're going to do. And how can, you can't grow your people and train people that size. So how do you solve it? You have to solve it with technology. And the agentic is really perfect for that, to be able to say, how can I take my processes that I have, turn them into an agentic AI ability to be able to help build and configure and set up a live event, and then have another agent be able to double check independently to see how things are, hand that over to the producer, the human, who then does the final check, is ready to give the green light to go, and then actually run it and be able to react to what is going on, be able to then monitor, identify issues, surface them to be solved during the event itself. And then, of course, once the event's over, then the tear down pieces. So you can efficiently, cost-effectively be able to take things down and stop spending on infrastructure when you don't need it anymore.
Right. So you see a necessity for that human still in that loop.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you know, the future is the future, but right. Certainly at this point, because of the brand value there, you know, with that live event, it's, you know, you lose one little bit, one little mistake, one little things, and huge impacts. So there is always, at different stages, there will be a human in the loop to be able to validate and be able to say, okay, let's go forward. To be able to get maybe, you know, surface those sort of issues, and then for them to be able to make the right decisions, you know, about how to move things forward. I think any type of high value event that's going to be. That said, you know, if there's 100 times more hours or 100 times of events, there's going to be some lower value events, and which will just have smaller audiences. And you would think that over time, more and more, you would rely more and more on technology to be able to help to run those things, with the human essentially being able to be the manager, the supervisor, the one to be able to make sure that things are.
So my pillow fighting league
yeah, exactly.
event,
yes.
I could see that being a great.
Yes.
I got to have my pillow fighting league. So are there particular parts that maybe are more ripe for sort of agentic pieces that you may start with? You know, in the broadcasting space, there's quality of service, sort of monitoring, making decisions, and, you know, switching and what routes. Are there places that you see in this broadcasting space that may be more ripe for this advancement?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I've talked about a couple of them, but I'll be very clear maybe about two aspects of it. One is that ability to aid in the scale, how to be more productive, essentially, per human input to be able to do it. And that certainly is a big part of it. Number two, from a validation standpoint, that independent observer piece of it. How do you be able to have something that can come in that was created independently from, let's say, the processes, the original processes, but their job purely is to validate and understand and surface, identify issues. In broadcasts, you know, the issues don't tend to like turn off the signal, and it's very much. They're often just brownouts, like little things like this, like the voice sync is off, or it goes to a slightly lower resolution, you know, a video which just is perceived as just, you know, a little fuzzier, or the latency goes up, you know, or like various different things like that, or an ad slot is missed. Things that maybe the audience doesn't just sees as a degradation, not necessarily a complete failure. So being able to have that, I think, is a really important part. But I think what we have looked forward to, and we're already seeing parts of this implemented, is being able to have AI be able to help to have a more holistic sort of view of everything that's going on, and doing it live. The old school way, let's pick on something particular, advertising. So the traditional old school way is that the Nielsen system would do a statistical measurement and publish it. They'd publish early numbers, usually the same night, but then there was days later, they'd improve the numbers, get more details and everything like that. So it was always an after the fact sort of type of measurement of the audience. And it was also a statistical measurement as well. So it wasn't truly down to individuals. And it wasn't more comprehensive in terms of understanding when they came in, when they left, what were they watching prior, other things like that, okay? So now let's think about a system where not only do you have continuous measurement understanding of the engagement piece, but do you also have an understanding of what is happening in the live video as well, okay? Because again, this is live video, so it's not predictable as to the timing or even what is going to happen. Combine those things together with then what's going on in the ad market and the demand side and those who want to actually buy the ad space and actually put their creatives out there. Think about a future where now that really truly is live being able to be done, and then they will adjust course, the market will shift, the values will shift, you'll be able to maximize monetization, and be able to have a more enjoyable experience really for the consumer as well in the end.
Right. And I think a lot about, I think even Simon was mentioning this a little bit about the personalization aspect. And so much of that depends on the data that's there, access to that agents have to that data. Where do you see that advancing and customers being able to take advantage of that?
Well, I'll give a great example that actually just happened jointly with working with Microsoft as well, and that was and working with Marquee Sports, which is the home of the Chicago Cubs, and so for baseball, and with that we took the live video that was coming in, so all the feeds that were coming in, and then recall that in the coder I talked about, it identifies what is in that live feed and used it to be able to improve the video quality. Well, that also allows us to be able to determine a subset of frames of which interesting things are going on. And then we could send those out to a model. Now, a model would overflow if it were just sending a full live video stream. It would never be able to keep up with it. But if you're sending select frames, you're decimating down to 3 to 6 frames a second. The model's much better at being able to keep up, especially with the work that we did with Microsoft to be able to have the models be able to, as they sent out, deployed out essentially out all of the insight gathering from that, is that we're able to keep up real time with that. And what we do then is the model will then essentially extract out even deeper information about what has been going on in the video, and then we then re-embed that back into the video in what are called ID3 tags, so essentially just really metadata tags that identify and describe something with there. Now we have a rich video there, okay, and with a lot of data attached with it, and it opens up a world of things to do. Well, what did we do with the Chicago Cubs? Is that we allowed for to take this situation where, when you think about baseball games, they're long. They not as long as they used to be, but they still are longer, and they often are during the week when people are working, and so typically maybe 10% of the audience is there for the first inning, okay, and then it grows and grows and grows till everyone's there past the 7th inning stretch, pretty much in there. So, well, if I have this live stream that has all this identification, temporal identification, what's going on, when someone joins the stream, we can create a personalized catch-up reel for them, like a 30-second, a minute, or whatever. It can be identified to you to say, Ronnie loves, this one pitcher. He loves strikeouts. He loves, whatever. He has someone on his fantasy team that's, from the Cardinals who are playing, or whatever, something like that. And then it will generate for you an instant sort of catch-up reel for that, personalized to what your tastes are. You can watch that, and then you join the game live in progress. And so, that's a super interesting use of AI, which we couldn't have done 2 years ago, let alone even a year ago would have been hard.
Excellent. I love those scenarios. It's really exciting time. So Where do you see, or what would you recommend? You guys have been doing this for a while. You're moving to agentic. How would you recommend media companies or any sort of company that's looking to move this space? How would you recommend them getting started and getting into playing in the space?
Well, I think a lot of it is, understanding what is the business objective. Focus on that. Focus on, am I going to help the monetization aspect of it? Am I going to make us more efficient so we can increase the number of things that we do? Is there a quality aspect that we want to be doing? Is it an engagement piece for it, like something that is more personalized and sort of specific to an individual? So go back and sort of say, what does the business need, and identifying that, either the consumer or the actual operational sort of needs from that, and maybe work backwards from there. And so from that, then be able to understand, okay, what can we do that will help drive that? What are the processes and the tooling that's already used? And then from there, move back and sort of identify those use cases essentially that will be able to use that. And as I really think that in the broadcast space, I mean, we're media space where we're focused on, so much of it is really driven by, can I be more efficient? Can I do more? Can this help me to do more? Can this help me to do it in a better quality way? For that? Is this something that allows me to be able to have much better insights into what's going on? Because there's so much complexity in a real-time fashion. And so can I get an aid to be able to help with them? Those are like three big areas within the media space, which I know apply outside to other industries as well. They may have their own specific unique things too, but those would be certainly my recommendations.
Yeah, we've worked with several companies across multiple industries, media, also energy and manufacturing across a gambit, and some very tactical ways that we've advised customers is almost a sort of a velocity to scale sort of motion as well, where and even looking at our tooling, sort of Copilot versus AI Foundry, where if you want to get going and have this velocity, you can start with sort of Copilot. If you have internal scenarios, if you can easily connect to data, then you can start with that Copilot and get some quick wins, whether it's internally getting more out of the workforce or getting a smarter workforce. Is a great way to start, and I think that plays into media as well. And then when you scale through, you have more external customers, or your data is more complex, you can start, or you want to think agent-to-agent solutions. That's where we see AI Foundry coming into place. So I think there's a lot of sort of things that impact the media, but multiple fields in multiple industries where we can see Microsoft and this media platform coming to play here.
Yeah, well, you were telling me a story earlier about one of the other companies that you work with, and when you were telling the story, to me it sounded a similar problem statement maybe, and that is there is noise you're trying to observe things and see what's going on, and there's a lot of noise, and you're trying to figure out from the noise, where's the signal, where's something that I need to solve and fix. So that was the pipeline. So do you want to talk maybe a bit more about the pipeline solution?
Yeah, sure, a little bit. There was we were working with an energy customer, right? And the idea was, hey, we need to understand when there is a leak in the pipeline. So it's a very interesting space, and it has a lot of complexity around understanding how do you get signal out of noise. And it's a process that impacts multiple industries. So you have sensors out on multiple pieces of equipment, and you want to be smart about like, hey, how am I actually detecting this is a leak, right? So we actually have things like running AI at the edge, right? So you can also have that applicable to even in the media space. Where do you run this AI out on the edge versus in the cloud? In this case, we were running AI out on the edge, trying to determine whether this is actually a leak, and not that it was, but is it the possibility? Mm-hmm. When that happens, you can alert actually the human in the loop back at the control room. They can take a look at this scenario and say, yep, it's a leak, no, it's not. And then, hey, how do we deal with this? Right? Do I send a drone out? Do I send out a person? And in some cases, that's really expensive, especially if you have offshore. Then you've got a helicopter going, taking a look at this, or a ship that's going out there. So it's an expensive way to deal with this. So you have to be really intentional. It also gets people out of harm's way. If there is a leak, then you don't necessarily want someone there, or you want to send them in when it's safe. So, that sort of edge to cloud solution, that AI at the edge as well as in the cloud, is a very important sort of pattern that we see in multiple industries. Sometimes it's life-saving, sometimes it's entertainment, but both are really important to the business. So I love those kind of patterns and how those replicate, and there's a lot of great tools that we see in AI Foundry and Copilot and AIO, which is our IoT offering, that come together and bring this agents all together, keeping people safe, keeping them entertained, keeping them happy, which is a big part of business success here, how we bring value.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, any other sort of topics that we should hit? We could go into more details, but also we do have an audience here if they'd like to jump in with a question or two.
Yeah. Should we open up? Any questions? We can talk forever, but we'd love to see. If not, we've got.
We have a question. Okay, so the question was...
Should we repeat? I don't know if...
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Yeah, so the question was, I had earlier mentioned the fact that live events, drive a lot of the revenues, the highest proportion of revenues in the media business, and that, executives have been telling me that they're being told to acquire like 100 times more, literally 100 times more live events because of that fact. So what is driving it? To be honest, it is both... So when it's a subscription-based service, it's because the fact that it is an event-driving mechanism that people want to make sure that they've signed up for, and it reduces churn because they don't want to lose their subscription. So you can go through when it's like an on-demand type service, people often will just subscribe and then leave, and then wait for the next thing to come on. Okay, whereas there's a continued role of live events, they're more compelled to stay on for longer. So there's that side of it. On the advertising side of it, advertisers will pay a lot more, like 10 to 50 times more for a space where everyone's watching at the same time. It's a social event. They're going to talk about it later. They're going to connect the basket or the home run or whatever, and they will associate in their minds as well, and they may even be talking about the great commercial that came on after that as well. So that shared experience. There's a huge amount of value for that. And it's also, if you notice, during the biggest live events, the types of commercials that they show are very different than the types of commercials for a sitcom or other things like that, or if you look at an advertising supported service for there. And so their ad strategies shift because of all these high value aspects of it.
Well, great. Any others? All right. Well, it's great to have a chat with you.
Yep.
Talk through. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the media space, and we look forward to seeing more from MediaKind.
Absolutely. Looking forward to doing more with Microsoft too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know it's late in the day. I've got a couple minutes left. I think what you saw with MediaKind there and the great conversation that Ronnie just had was just the immense importance that's placed on live events, the way the data is used, the way that that's really changing the way that media entertainment things. And I think also the application of agentic AI to workflows and automation, really, really critical. There is no way you can do the things that they just talked about without those tools, right? And to scale them at the way that they're going to need to do it going forward. All predicated on responsible AI practices, bringing confidence around transparency, reliability, accessibility, and everything else. I think foundation of trust is really critical. If you put your customer data in that environment, it's going to have to be really, really well looked after. That is your IP. That is the things you care about. And so with that, you can definitely start your journey here. Obviously, you came to Ignite. You wanted to learn more. We do actually do a lot more media entertainment than you can probably even imagine. Connect with your account teams, understand what solutions we provide from a Microsoft perspective, and great partners like MediaKind. And you can also visit our site to get more customer stories. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.